Michigan, Ohio State. Why did I change them in the rankings? Here we go.
And the ball game is over as the two teams leave their sidelines and go to shake hands. Michigan improves to 9-0 on the season with a 52-17 win and stays on a collision course with Ohio State.
All right, so Michigan and Ohio State clearly on a collision course at the end of the month. And I sat there and watched those games, and I've watched a little bit of the film already today of those two teams. And here's the deal. I moved Michigan ahead of Ohio State in my poll. Now, you could say like, well, it's the weather. Okay, I understand that. But there is a truth right now about what I believe about these two teams. There's my top 10. Georgia, clearly. Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, TCU 4, Tennessee 5, Oregon 6, LSU 7, Bama 8, UCLA 9, Utah 10. That's my top 10. So Michigan goes above Ohio State. Why? Here's why. Ohio State may have the higher ceiling, but Michigan has the higher floor at this point. And I hear you, Buckeye fans, about the weather on Saturday. I hear you. And by the way, I understand it better than you do. In 2005, I had to play a game against Iowa State in which there was a tornado. No, not just like, hey, we played the Cyclones. No. There was a tornado delay before the game. So we delayed the game for about an hour, and then we had to roll out there, and it was like 35 mile an hour wind right in our face in the first quarter. So I get it. I get it better than you do. But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Buckeye fans. You play in the Big Ten. There are going to be elements. There are going to be elements. You see, we shouldn't be sitting here with one of the most talented rosters in all of college football, with an offensive line that's experienced and as big as what Ohio State's is, with an offense that can produce the run game that it has under Ryan Day. We should not be sitting here, and Buckeye fans should not be sitting here furiously updating their weather apps, checking on November 26th, because that's what's going on. Ohio State does not run the ball well enough, and they're not tough enough on the line of scrimmage on the offensive side to overcome the weather. Their passing game is unbelievable. It's the best in the country. All due respect to Tennessee. It's the best in the country. And yet, if they cannot play a physical game in the elements, then who knows? So you've got to check the weather. So now Buckeye fans are just crashing weather.com or whatever site you use for November 26th. Like, when are we going to get a forecast? When are we going to get a forecast on November 26th? And that's not how it should be. What happens if the weather is bad that day? You see, if the weather's bad that day, I know exactly what I'm going to get from Michigan. Because rain or shine, wind or no wind, dome, no dome, turf, grass, I know exactly what I'm going to get from Michigan. And it might not be the seventh gear that I've argued that Ohio State has, but I know I'm getting fifth or sixth gear every single time. And so it's that consistency, it's that offensive line play that leads me to put them at number 2. Now, I don't think that, or I don't know exactly the team that I would pick, and I'm not going to make a pick, obviously calling that game. But at this point, like, Michigan's probably kind of earned it. Like, you can't go do that against Northwestern. I don't care what the elements are doing. If the elements are like that against Northwestern, a one-win team, their only win in week 0 in Ireland against Nebraska, you should run the ball for 300 yards. You should run it 55 or 60 times for 300, 350 yards, and they should not be able to stop you. You're Ohio State. And the bottom line is the offensive line can't play that way, or at least hasn't played that way. They need to get better in the run game. Their offensive line has to improve. And I think even the most hardened Buckeye fans would agree with that. Let's just put it this way. I'm more concerned for Ohio State in the next 3 games than I would be for their potential last 3 games. So they're going to play Indiana in the shoe this weekend. I'm coming into town, by the way. Fun week to have this take, Joel. Going to Columbus. Buckeye fans, listen, you and I both know that this is true. Everything that I'm saying is true. You play in the shoe this weekend, Maryland next week, and then back in the shoe against Michigan. I'm more worried about those 3 weeks because of elements. I mean, what happens if you get a torrential rain? What happens if you get the wind again and it's not a one-win Northwestern team that you can kind of like ugly by 21-7? What happens if it is a team like Michigan on November 26th that doesn't care what's going on with the weather and plays on their terms and is consistent, right? Like, you've got a problem all of a sudden. So I'm more concerned in those 3 weeks than I would be for them in a dome in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game, or let's say like the Fiesta Bowl in a college football playoff semifinal down in Glendale, Arizona in a dome, or in a national championship in LA in SoFi Stadium. Like, in those 3 environments, heck, Ohio State, I'd put you up against anybody. In fact, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Ohio State play Georgia. I think those are the 2 best teams at the top end in the country right now. So I'd love to see it. But can you get there? I don't know. Because the offensive line is not good enough to sit there and play a physical, run-oriented game. They have to throw the ball. It was laid bare against Iowa. It was laid bare against Penn State. And to some degree, even though they averaged 5 yards a carry, it was laid bare against Northwestern. Like, you got to go out there and just dominate them, right? Like, you should be able to do that, and they didn't do that. Michigan is a little bit more consistent. They're also a team that has been totally dominant. They have not been tied, or they have not trailed in any fourth quarter all season. So why is Michigan up there at number 2? Well, it's because of that. And the bottom line is, I know Ohio State has a lot of money, but guess what? In the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks before November 26th, you can't build a roof over the shoe. And so checking the weather app, that's a tough proposition. Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, at least for now. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.